Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, Editor-in-Chief of thenationalpulse.com. It's been a busy weekend and it seems like an even busier morning. Late last night we learned, and will continue to learn, I'm sure, of more details about what may emerge as the largest cybersecurity attack on the United States and indeed its allies. Foreign and domestic companies, government agencies, all targeted by this exploit that seems to have been brought in under Chris Krebs. Now, the eagle-eyed viewers will remember Chris Krebs as the guy who intervened after the election, said, "This is the safest and most secure election we've ever had. America's never been more secure. President Trump's wrong." And President Trump rightly fired him, a bureaucrat, for attempting to intervene in election results. Now it looks like Chris Krebs was probably working on helping the Democrats over the last couple of months rather than doing his job, leaving the United States. And basically your details and your government's secrets open and available to foreign hackers. We'll bring you more news on that as we get it over the coming days, but this is no small thing. Well, what is a small thing is a man called Ryan Cooper. Ryan Cooper is a little weedy, snivelling soy boy. I can't even think of him without laughing. But what Ryan did this weekend with the help of a New Jersey Democrat isn't a laughing matter. In fact, it's a very serious matter, and a serious matter that I think law enforcement should look into. I want to make sure that we bring this up on the screen here. The article is up at the National Pulse. It's called "Dems Demand House Ban of Pro-Trump Congressman Use Force to Disenfranchise Over 92 Million Americans in a Hitler-Style Enabling Act." What does that mean? Well, Ryan Cooper works at a magazine, a British magazine, in fact, called The Week. It's owned by a publishing company in the United Kingdom, which is in turn owned by some kind of big corporate hedge fund type entity that buys up all of these different things. So Ryan's working for a foreign company, and Ryan writes this weekend that force should be used, i.e. the House Democrats should keep Republicans in Congress from taking their seats. Specifically 126, I think it was, Republicans from taking their seats. That's disenfranchising around about 92 million people in those districts. And force is the critical word that Ryan uses in his December the 12th article. He writes, quote, "It's worth thinking about what a party seriously committed to preserving democracy would do when faced with a seditious opposition party, namely cut them out of power and force them to behave. Democrats could declare all traitors ineligible to serve in national office, convene a Patriot Congress composed solely of people who have not committed insurrection against the American government, and use that power to re-entrench democracy." And it's really interesting in recent history, memorable history for some people still, another party did that. It was the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. When Adolf Hitler sniffed a bit of power, what he did was pass the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act effectively cut opposition parties, who he said were detrimental to the nation's democracy, out of power. And guess what he did? Forced them to behave. Or killed them. Ryan Cooper writes at the end of his article, he says, "This country was founded by people who thought it was worth putting their lives at hazard to throw off tyrannical rule. Perhaps some of that spirit can once again be found." Talking about violence. And the country was founded because violence had to be done to release the colonists from British rule. But Ryan, your claim is that Joe Biden won the election. Your claim is that Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. Your claim is that you're going to take the Senate. So what tyrannical rule is that exactly? you claim that the mainstream media is on your side, that the science is on your side, that scientists are on your side, the experts are on your side, the public, you say, is on your side. What tyrannical rule is that? Now, Ryan Cooper is a petty little tyrant himself, and I just wanted to let you all know that Ryan's out there tweeting away at Ryan L. Cooper right now because he's disturbed that we've caught him. We've caught him and the New Jersey Democrat, Bill Pascrell, attempting none other than a Hitlerian coup against the nation. Now, when conservatives say things like that, use the spirit of 1776, we're banned. Remember, we're taken off platforms, we're deplatformed, we are silenced, muzzled, warning screens thrown in front of our tweets, we are taken off MailChimp and Facebook and all of that. Will that happen to Ryan and his foreign company that's publishing things that say, stop American democracy, stop Republican members that are voted for taking their seats in Congress? I'm just wondering. And I think it's a very serious thing that the US government needs to look into, and that Donald Trump, in his second term, needs to look into as we think about the ramifications of meddling that's coming in terms of cyber attacks. Let's think about the meddling that's coming in the form of foreign publishers urging Americans to not seat their democratically elected congressman. Ryan L. Cooper on Twitter. Have a nice time, Ryan. Have a nice day. We'll be writing about you more over at the National Pulse, and when we return from this break, we'll be speaking to Matt Palumbo. We're talking about other journalists making major faux pas. We'll be right back. Journalists behaving badly. Do they ever behave well? My guest is Matt Palumbo, content manager of the Bongino Report, joining us, author of Dumb and Dumber, How Cuomo and de Blasio Ruined New York. We'll talk about that more in the next segment. I want to bring Matt on to talk about this reporter. I say reporter. Let's be clear. These people are activists. They look like activists. They smell like activists, really bad. And they march around town making the same kind of demands that left-wing activists do. They all sing from the same hymn sheet. We should not be referring to them as reporters. Sarah Polis over at The Hill. Matt Palumbo, tell us more.
Well, thanks for having me back on, Raheem, especially after, you shamed me last episode about my weight gain. But
yeah, you look like you've dropped like a pound.
I lost weight just because of you, Raheem. So this Sarah lady, I actually discovered her because you were tweeting about her. And I always say alleged journalist or journo. But I went through her history, and she's pretty terrible. So the thing you and I noticed yesterday was she was writing on Kelly Loeffler, and when you're a politician, you get asked to take photos with random people, and you obviously don't vet or screen them before you get a photo. So there was one guy who took a picture with her. Turned out he had some KKK links. Obviously, you don't really expect that when a random person asks you for a photo, but it turns out that's what happened. She found out about it and immediately denounced it, as you'd expect. And then the Sarah Polis woman writes an article claiming the exact opposite happened, that she defended the photo. So what happened next is everyone kind of ragged on the Hill for that. They changed the article, they changed the headline, they changed the body of the text to reflect what actually happened. But they did it stealthily. They didn't even put a disclaimer saying, an earlier version of this article was inaccurate and we had to change it. Then people complained about that, and then they finally added a disclaimer saying, oh, by the way, the original article said the exact opposite and we were wrong. And I think this was like the second time this has happened with her in 2 days. She did an article about Josh Hammer at Newsweek, where Hammer was criticizing a journalist, alleged journalist named Mehdi Hassan. He used to work for Al Jazeera, which is funded by... Don't
start with Mehdi Hassan. I could tell you stories about Mehdi Hassan.
He sucks so bad. So he used to work for Al Jazeera, which is funded by Qatar. So Josh Hammer called him out and said, accused him of being bought off by Qatar. And for some reason, Hassan pretended it was a racist and said, well, that doesn't make any sense because I'm not from Qatar, which disproves his own thesis that it's racist. Of course we're saying it's because where you worked. If you worked at Russia Today and I attacked you, I would say...
The great race of Qatar.
The race of Qatar, yeah. So Sarah writes an article, and of course Medhi's accusation of racism is the article. It's Newsweek editor accused of racism when it's a nonsense charge. And then the thing is, they didn't even ask Josh for his opinion. It wasn't until 4 hours after the article was published that they added in his tweets denying it. And of course, it's phrased as, well, this is just his defense. The editorial slant is in favor of he's a racist.
Matt, let's take a step back from all of this, because whether it's what I talked about in the last segment in Little Ryan Cooper, whether it's Sarah Polis over at The Hill, the reason we're discussing this is because there now seems to be this, as the left feels emboldened, right? There's no doubt they feel emboldened by the court cases going in their favor and by the electors being seated in their favor, legitimate or not, and I would say not, but they feel emboldened, and with that sense of strength and that sense of power, they are coming after, I wouldn't even say that Josh Hammer is particularly right-wing. He sort of sits in the more centrist, maybe even a little neoconservative side of things, but they're going after people in a big way. Like Ryan Cooper said, use force. And this is what they're doing. Sarah Polis is using the seemingly august name of the Hill newspaper, or at least august on Capitol Hill, to target conservatives. And how? By leveraging Mehdi Hasan. I mean, Mehdi Hasan is on the record as calling non-Muslims pigs, cattle and apes. And yet this is who the left uses as their moral arbiters, Matt?
Yeah, and the thing is, too, and they pay no consequences for being wrong. When you are an elite and working on these publications, like, what a good example. Remember, and this might be a few years ago, that woman Sarah Jiang got hired at New York Times. Point is, people found all these racist tweets of hers, and because she's on the left, she got to dismiss it as a learning experience, and I was joking. And you can go on her Wikipedia page, and there's not even a single mention of it on Wikipedia. You go through the edit history, and all the editors on Wikipedia, anytime someone mentions her racist comments, they get taken off the page.
Oh,
so,
Matt, don't forget Caitlin Collins over at CNN using the F word, but not that F word, the three-letter F word to describe homosexuals. And when that was found, she was just kidding, she was young, she didn't mean anything by it, so on and so forth. But this is important because this is what, the next 4 years portends if Joe Biden does take office. It won't be going and asking questions of a potential Biden administration, or as we like to say, as like you do with the alleged journalist, an alleged Biden administration, right? It will be routinely targeting conservatives. It will make the IRS scandal look like a drop in the ocean. That's what we're going to see happening here. And Matt, I want to keep you over for the next segment as well, so forgive me for dominating some of this conversation with you, but I need to ask you these specific questions as well of people like Sarah Polis, because I've heard that one of the reasons she's targeting the right, and I'm not even joking when I say this, somebody actually told me this, a reliable source told me this, so she was recently dating a One American News producer. I think the relationship ended badly, so she's exacting revenge for that failed relationship on people on the right. I mean, are these reporters in Washington, D.C. really this childish and this petty? And like you say, what's the feedback mechanism here? Is the Hill going to fire her? Is there any, is she going to be disciplined? When Leith Stories, the CCP-linked Facebook fact-checker, claims that the National Pulse got a capital letter in the wrong place, we get a strike on our Facebook page. We're now taken down. Will the Hill get a strike for publishing fake news under Sarah Polis's byline?
Well, no, and the reason we know why is because, for instance, just the most obvious myth of the election cycle was that Trump said there were very fine people in Charlottesville. Every liberal repeats that, and even one of the Facebook's fact checkers, I think it was PolitiFact, it might have been Leith Stories, had debunked it, and yet every single time the Biden campaign would tweet out or post on Facebook about it, making the claim, it never got fact checked, meaning they had the fact check available, they never applied it to them. And it does seem like, we can do an article where we have 100 facts, and if one of them is wrong, the entire article gets dismissed. And also, you can look at, the archives of some of these people on Lead Stories. One of the guys worked for CNN for 25 years, and what do you know? 100% of the time, he's fact-checking something from the right. And it's obviously, you're just trying to censor these people. Hey,
Matt, we'll be back after a quick break here. I want to make sure that everybody knows they can get Matt's book. It's coming out soon, Dumb and Dumber, How de Blasio and Cuomo Ruined New York. We'll be back with more of that after this short break. Well, lots of news continuing to come in about the electors being seated and so on and so forth. It's really important that we pay attention to what Stephen Miller said this morning in an interview on another channel. He said that the Trump team will seat their own electors and send their own electors for the Electoral College vote. Pay very close attention to that. I don't really want to say that much more at the moment because I don't want to get ahead of the strategy. I don't really know the whole strategy, but from what I hear and understand, there are still several ways in which the president, his team, the vice president can utilize what is very clearly constitutional legal recourse to ensure that illegal votes, the likes of which we have seen cast across the country, are turfed out and dismissed. So just pay very close attention to what Miller said this morning. We've got the story up on the nationalpulse.com in our breaking section, a whole bunch of stories from this morning. Later on in the day, we have an exclusive opinion editorial from Steve Cortez that'll be going up. Natalie Winter's working hard on a lot of exclusives and a lot of scoops. We'll be getting to her in the next couple of segments on this show as well. I want to bring back Matt Palumbo. He's the content manager for the Bongino Report, one of the finest aggregation sites out there. He will tell you it is the finest. Number one, and then I want to make sure that we plug the book again, Dumb and Dumber, because which one is dumb and which one is dumber, whichever it is, just got in hot and then hotter water. Matt, tell us more.
Yeah, so Andrew Cuomo was just accused of sexual assault by a former aide of his. The aide in recent weeks actually had kind of stepped up criticism of him on Twitter. And, you know, it's not, you know, a political thing. She is a progressive Democrat, might even be to the left of him. So there, you know, is reason to believe it. On the other hand, she is not speaking to the press. So, you know, I kind of have to wonder why that is. But point is, it's still another case study in media bias, which is what we were talking about. You know, when Republicans are accused of sexual misconduct, the story is a Republican getting accused of sexual misconduct. When Cuomo or a Democrat is accused, the story is Democrat denying the accusal of sexual misconduct. And you can see that play out. So the USA Today did an article on it. And when they posted it on social media, they had a caption for it that was like, Andrew Cuomo denies sexual assault allegations that there is no evidence for. So people thought, well, how do they cover Republicans when there's no evidence? And, you know, when Jane Carroll claimed Trump raped her 20 years ago, no evidence whatsoever, they just ran that as straight news. When Brett Kavanaugh was accused, every single accuser, no matter how ridiculous the claims were, it got reported as straight news. And that was the focus of the story. So we're just seeing that play out.
Don't forget, it wasn't just news when E. Jean Carroll made her claims. It was, I think it was ahead of a book that she had coming out or something like that. And it was the front page of the magazines, the New York Magazine and all of this, you know, calling her a hero. You know, remember the claim was, yeah, he raped me in a public place. Oh, right. So did anybody see? Was there any CCTV footage? Was there any witnesses? Did anybody come forward? Did you report it afterwards? No. And then I think she went on TV and called rape sexy, if my memory serves me correctly.
That was on CNN.
So you want to talk about credible claims? That was a totally non-credible claim. This one has more credibility to it. And you're right. I mean, before you came on today on the show, I had almost kind of forgotten that this claim had been made this weekend.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Who's reporting on it? Right. I don't think anyone besides, you know, people we see on Twitter, which obviously is a website most people are not on. So, you know, how are you going to know?
It's extraordinary stuff. Matt, we've got a couple of minutes left here. Tell us more about the Bongino Report. Tell us more about the book.
Oh, so Bongino Report, I mean, it's just our competitor to Drudge. You know, I think a lot of people, your audience included, have noticed that in the past at least 4 years, Drudge has kind of got off the wagon. And but you know, the evidence seems to be that he's still running it. So, you know, what the heck happened there? We really have no idea. Dumb and Dumber. So it's my takedown of Cuomo and de Blasio. I will say the easiest book I've ever written. And I still can't decide who's dumber. So I guess the title is maybe a bit redundant. But I divided it into 3 sections. So I did one on coronavirus, which was, I think, the most relevant one, just because the media tried to act like these were the guys who figured it all out. In reality, they did the worst in the entire nation after New Jersey. And the next sections are on the economy and law and order. And these are all things that are just trending downward in the state and city. And I will note, of interest to your audience, Natalie Winters of the National Pulse did help me research a little bit for it. And I give her a shout out in the intro. So thank you for that, Natalie.
Hold on.
Yes.
Do I get a shout out in the intro for relinquishing Natalie for that work?
No, well, you're on the back cover. You are quoted on the back cover. So
always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Well, they would see your name first if you think about it. Who's going to open the book before reading the back cover? I don't know.
Matt, a couple of questions for you just before I let you go as well. I like to think that I single-handedly create a detente between all these new aggregators that came out. I know Citizen Free Press recently linked to your book, pushing pre-orders as well. So a little bit of competition out there, but we're all getting along at the same time. And there's new ones popping up every day, Populist Press and beyond. Also, so I just want to what sets for you? You know, brag all you want. What sets the Bongino Report apart?
I mean, I just think I have good story selection. I don't know. I just feel like I've been writing for about 5 or so years. I wrote for Alan West out of college, and then for Dan Bongino, and I've just over that time kind of gotten a feel for what that audience responds to, what they like. I just feel like I can have a finger on the quote unquote national pulse, to steal a phrase from you.
And then finally, because our audience remembers that last time you were on the show, we couldn't even fit you all in the camera shot. You were so morbidly obese. What's been the best workout routine? Is it just not eating pizza every few hours, like I told you to?
So it's pizza every other day now.
Right.
Run an hour a day. And I just kind of think whenever I feel like not working out, I just think of what you said to me, and it motivates me to get off my butt and prove you wrong. And I dressed up, so I thought I'd really go overboard today.
Looks great. Matt Palumbo, content manager at the Bongino Report, author of Dumb and Dumber. Thank you for joining us here today, this afternoon on the show.
Thanks for having me, Raheem. It was fun.
All right, when we come back, more from Natalie Winters, the breaking news, the exclusives. Eric Swalwell, remember that guy? Mr. Farty Pants? Everybody was up in arms about the bang-bang that he did with the fang-fang a couple of weeks ago, right? That was the story that came out. You like that one, didn't you? You can't see, she laughs and distracts me during the segments. I can't help that I'm funny. We've got more exclusive reporting on Eric Swalwell and his links with the Chinese Communist Party controlled state enterprises donating to Eric Swalwell's campaigns. A full investigation needs to go on now about the CCP and its hooks into the Democratic Party. If you wait any longer, we're already in a hot war, a hot cyber war with the Chinese Communist Party, a hot propaganda war with the Chinese Communist Party, a hot trade war with the Chinese Communist Party. How much more, America, do you want to take from the Chinese Communist Party before you start pushing back? We'll discuss that story and a whole lot more when we return with Natalie Winters after this short break. Well, I want to say a great big welcome. We know we are attracting a larger and larger audience by the day, so if this is the first time that you're tuning in here on Real America's Voice to the National Pulse, welcome to the show. And I want to make sure that you download the Real America's Voice app. You can search in your app store America's Voice on Google, on Apple, on your Apple TVs, on your Rokus, on your Amazon devices, whatever it is. That's how I watch Real America's Voice on my television at home through the app. So you can make sure you get it. And it gives a great breakdown of every show, what time it's on, the repeats, the best clips from every show, the best interviews that the network carries all day long. And just a great testament to the fantastic production staff and marketing team here at Real America's Voice as a new network that's really growing more and more by the day. Recommend us to your friends if you like us. I also want to say a great big thank you to everybody in the nationalpulse.com Discord chat channel. We have a private Discord chat channel. It is available for you to join. It's got just hundreds of great people in there who are conversing, chatting about the news stories every day, figuring things out, investigating, listening, learning. You can join from as little as $5 a month at thenationalpulse.com/support. Real news won't exist unless you do something about it. We're not corporate sponsored or corporate backed. We are deplorable fueled. Now, speaking of deplorables, Natalie Winters joins me in studio today to talk about Mr. Farty Pants, Eric Swalwell. Natalie, you got a great scoop over the course of the weekend. Just tell us more about what you found out about Congressman Swalwell and his further links to the Chinese Communist Party.
financial links this time. So Eric Swalwell, as he was running for re-election to be a congressman, accepted money from an employee of a company called Air China. Now, for those who don't know, that company is state-run. It's based in China. It's actually the national flag carrier airline of China, meaning that whenever Xi Jinping wants to travel, that's the airline he takes. The airline has received a host of awards from the Chinese Communist Party. Nonetheless, an individual who serves as a customer service manager for the company based in California donated 4 separate times to Eric Swalwell's campaign. Ostensibly, the campaign either greenlit or accepted the donations. I'd say the public deserves to know how much they knew about this individual when they were accepting her thousands of dollars. I believe the total amount was $6 grand, as I said, over the course.
Not insignificant in a district.
No, not insignificant.
District race.
And specifically 4 separate donations spanning about a year.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Customer service manager for Air China, right? And some people will say, oh, you know, it's just an employee. They can give their money, you know, their state salary, Chinese Communist Party money, to whomever they want, especially if they're a US citizen. But what we're learning from these leaks that are coming out of Shanghai and everything around that, we'll talk about that as well. In fact, feel free to just rip on it. But what we're learning is that actually Chinese Communist Party employees are positioned intentionally in places all around the world to do things just like this. It could be interfering in elections, it can be harvesting data, it could be stealing things. We've got another story up about more theft that's been identified by the DOJ. So this isn't like, we're not looking at this and saying, hey, somebody gave some money, so, you know, they must be linked to the CCP. This is actually a strategy, right, on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. And it goes back to, what is it, Article 7?
Sure. So Article 7, which is of China's national intelligence law, says that any individual, company, firm, institution that's based in China, or if it resides abroad, could be requisitioned by the Chinese state to help with, quote, intelligence work, and they must maintain secrecy with regards to any tasks that they're helping the Chinese Communist Party with. So that's definitely a Article 7 that is definitely employed and utilized by the Chinese Communist Party. And I would say that to individuals who say, well, this person is just a customer service manager, I'm sure her ties to the Chinese Communist Party, they don't matter. But right. I think that the fact that you saw over the weekend a database with 2 million individuals who are members of the Chinese Communist Party, that being the Chinese state keeps records on them, whether it's their name, ethnicity, their party identification number. They divided them into 79,000 different branches. So whether those branches are government, foreign consulates, and some of those are for the Chinese Communist Party, but some of them were also identified as operatives that had been placed in British, Australian, and American foreign government agencies, whether they were consulates or embassies. But more concerningly, and I would argue what you're seeing with Air China, specifically their American branch, is that Chinese Communist Party members are potentially being deployed to go and work for Western corporates. Now, this database, which was I believe data to 2016, obtained by a group of Chinese dissidents who later turned it over to kind of a bipartisan international advocacy group before it reached Western media. Some of the companies that were targeted in this database are...
well, you had Pfizer.
Yeah.
You had Qualcomm. You had Boeing. These are not small companies and not piddly things. And I just want to bring it back to Swalwell a little bit here as well, because, look, Eric Swalwell... I nearly said Eric Schwer in there. Another one. Eric Swalwell is not a just some tangential congressional from some small district who just focuses on his local constituency issues. This is a man who ran to be the president of the United States on the Democratic National Party National Convention ticket. Right now, let's park for a second that Joe Biden is also compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. My question is do you think there's anybody within the Democratic Party who either isn't compromised or hasn't in some way, shape or form turned the other cheek when looking? Because, I know Adam Schiff is supposed to be tough on China, but, I mean, all the evidence points to the fact that these guys have just been looking the other way and willfully ignoring this for so long. Let me ask you this question more to the point. Does the Chinese Communist Party, in your estimation, pose more of a threat to the United States of America today than the Soviet Union did in its heyday?
100%, and it's not just a Democrat or Republican issue. China is targeting all of America, whether it's our financial institutions, our academic institutions, and I think that you've seen a lot of speeches and literature coming out from the Department of Justice, the FBI, on why this is such a threat, and it's because China has embedded itself so much in all of our institutions to the point where we can't attack them because whether it's Wall Street is beholden to them financially, so many professors are somehow taking Chinese money, even our think tanks, they're pushing out essentially propaganda reports that are showing that, you know, China and the Chinese Communist Party enjoys record level and record number of support. It's very hard to kind of extract an enemy that is so within.
The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times all publish China daily. China propaganda placed inside Western newspapers. We'll be back with more breaking news from the National Pulse in just a moment. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Getting a lot of live feedback on the show, which I like, in the Discord chat channel. Apparently I am starting to talk over people like Steve Bannon does on the War Room, so I will keep myself in check. Natalie, apparently your hair is rustling your microphone, so we've got to keep that in check as well. Just some live programming notes from the National Pulse family. You can join that family over at thenationalpulse.com/support. They are, as you can hear, a rip-roaring riot. I want to start this segment by talking about something that we went into in the first two blocks, that is journalists behaving badly, pretending to be journalists when really they're activists. And I think this is going to be a recurring theme now at the National Pulse. We've got to make these people famous. They don't like their faces being up on the screen. They don't like being talked about. They're all welcome on this show if they want to defend their positions, by the way. That applies to Ryan Cooper, who wants to force Republicans to behave by keeping them out of Congress, not through the ballot box, but by other means. He talks in violent terms. So he's welcome on this show to defend those claims. We can talk to any of these people you want. Sarah Polis over at The Hill. And now we're going to move on to another one over at Axios. And I've got to remind the audience here, this is only in the last week that all of these reporters have been doing this stuff. I say this, they feel emboldened by the fact that official sources, as they say, are calling the race for Joe Biden. They feel like it's time now that they get to go after conservatives. Well, guess what? We're not backing down. We're going to get back in your faces even harder. Let's go to this one now on the story we wrote this weekend. Bethany Allen Ebrahimian is Axios' primary China reporter. Natalie, as a primary China reporter at an outlet like Axios, clearly just a straight news outlet, that's what we're told by the verified sticker on their social media and all of this, what has she been saying? She's clearly just playing a straight bat, right?
Not exactly. I'd also add that she has an upcoming book deal with HarperCollins, writing a book about China, interestingly enough. But
what is it called? Why China is the best and we love the CCP, please Xi Jinping, come and mention me somewhere in one of your speeches?
Maybe actually,
by Bethany Allen Ebrahimian?
It might be a regretful memoir talking about how she's so sad that the Chinese Communist Party has not become a superpower that is more powerful than the United States. She put out a rather odd 4-tweet thread detailing, first of all, that kind of the establishment consensus with regards to China, that if we were to treat them kindly and open up to them, that...
It's the old Kissinger mantra.
Yeah. And saying that that's not the case, which, great, we agree. We've said that for a while now.
Sorry.
But
China will not liberalize because you welcome them into the global market. They will take advantage of the global market to take advantage of you.
Totally.
Right.
So, but there's a buried lead to the thread, and you see it in when she says, really regretfully, that China would not be, quote, a better superpower than the U.S. Also talking about how China was not...
Why don't we just read these tweets? Let's just read them,
sure,
and let the audience decide for themselves what's being said here, because we could talk around this stuff a lot, and we can put them up on the screen here as well. So just read these tweets for us. And you can... I don't know what she sounds like. Do her voice.
I think people like your accent more, but I will, I will read it. A whole generation of China hands in America, myself included, dedicated lives and years to the hope that the Chinese government could perhaps become as good and wise as the people it governs. It's really hard to accept that we were wrong. It's a profound grief. I want there to be a better superpower than the U.S. has been. I want there to be a country that doesn't act like the U.S. too often has. But just because I want that doesn't mean I can fool myself into believing that China will be that better, kinder superpower. The Chinese government isn't evil incarnate. Neither is the U.S. government, of course. But I believe we are far, far past the point where anyone can hope that China will bring a better, fairer, and more just international system. And this isn't to say China will only bring bad. The U.S. has done a lot of good too, despite the ill we have wrought. Nothing is so simple, but I'm still seeing this hope against hope that Beijing might be somehow better, fairer, less violent. We are past that point, friends.
I almost want to congratulate her for waking up to this. But at the same time, I mean, referring to herself as a China hand, right? A China hand in America. And she has been peddling this nonsense. I mean, doing damage to the nation, doing damage to public policy, doing damage to foreign policy, doing damage to America's position in the world, and still talking down America in these tweets as well. Now, look, I've got a lot of problems with the policy decisions that have been taken in my country and in your country for the last, decade and a half or beyond, specifically as regards, she talks about the violence, the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war, all of that. But thinking that China would be the savior of all of this, that's out of the frying pan and into the fire, right? That's not ever going to be about. This is the country that sells hair belonging to a repressed ethnic minority, right? It's the country that puts people into prison camps, the Uyghurs in China. It's the country that oppresses their lower classes, their working classes, creates an unclass of people so that it's a communist government can benefit more off the backs of the hard-working people of China. And this is who she thought would be a, quote, better, fairer superpower than the United States of America. So my question is, and you will know a thing or two about this, is schooling so bad in the United States that she was raised and taught to believe that the Communist Party of China could do a better job of good governance rather than the Constitutional Republic of the United States?
Well, I was actually a step ahead of you in looking up her LinkedIn to see where she was educated. And in fact, I see that she attended the Hopkins Nanjing Center for Chinese and American Studies, which is one of the very, very, very premier U.S. institutions that collaborates with the Chinese Communist Party, both in taking Chinese foreign money, but also having China-based programs. But it's exactly what you said, these useful idiots, frankly, who naively, or I would say it's more of a nefarious, calculated, I would say planted belief often sometimes in these people's head, because they go to these institutions that they're accepting millions, if not tens of millions of dollars from the Chinese Communist Party. I'm inclined to think of Harvard Ash Center. Not only have they accepted a ton of money from Chinese state-owned enterprises, but they're the premier, esteemed institution that's publishing papers that's saying that the Chinese Communist Party is enjoying record levels of support.
We could do this all day. No, honestly, we could do this all day. And if we had the resources, we could have more and more of these useful idiots. I mean, I kind of feel bad. She's been brainwashed into simping for the CCP. Well, if you want to help us out more people like this, going over to thenationalpulse.com/support, help us grow the organization and out more of these useful idiots. We'll be right back with more breaking news. Welcome back to the show, which has an open invite to any of these useful idiots. Bethany Allen, whatever her name is, little Ryan Cooper, Sarah Paulus. Sarah Paulus, if you need some agony aunt time over your recent breakup, just come here. Just come. We got couches over there. We can sit you down, you can talk to us, tell us all about how we hurt you. And now you want to write fake news stories for the Hill newspaper. I want to go now to one of the breaking news stories, and this is the thing. These are the things you'll never hear elsewhere, and that's why I'm so grateful for you joining us here. Nobody pays attention to this stuff, but it's so important. Natalie, update us on the latest report from the Department of Justice on more being stolen away by Chinese Communist Party useful idiots.
Well, adding to the running list of Chinese Communist Party linked members, apparatchiks, stealing intellectual property from the United States. I guess it's really a running dog list, running dogs of the Chinese Communist Party. But an individual just pled guilty to not only conspiring to commit wire fraud, but also, according to the Department of Justice, stealing, quote, trade secrets concerning the research, identification, and treatment of a range of pediatric medical conditions from an Ohio-based children's hospital. He says he was planning to take the research and sell it to someone somewhere in China.
Stealing intellectual property, trade secrets, research from a children's hospital.
From a children's hospital.
Get what's her name on the phone, Ebrahimian. Get her on the phone, ask her if this is the better, kinder, fairer superpower she believes in.
And in the case, do you know who might be doing PR for China, trying to, make it seem better that they actually weren't stealing trade secrets from an Ohio children's hospital? You were talking about Governor Cuomo earlier. Well, he actually has a former aide, not the one that alleges sexually harassed by him, but who actually registered in 2018 to work on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, specifically one of their foreign embassies, doing PR and communications for them. And I'm pretty sure that that registration is still active on the Foreign Agent Registration DOJ-run database.
Yeah, sleepwalking towards disaster, honestly, as a civilization. This is extraordinary. Yet another exclusive up. See, we do the real news here, rather than just chit-chatting around what the president tweeted this afternoon like CNN does the whole time. Real news. I'm going to put it up on the screen now. Biden cabinet picks welcomed Chinese Communist Conference for group boasting private briefings with U.S. officials. Natalie, tell us about this group, and specifically, who was welcoming people to the CCP conference? Yes,
I will attempt to walk through because this piece is very, very, very dense. But this group was just called.
It.
No, but even for myself, it's very long, and frankly, each paragraph has
a story in and of itself.
It's a story in and of itself. So there's a group called the Committee of 100, and they boast membership and involvement from a lot of high-profile and frankly very wealthy Chinese Americans. A lot of those individuals are also reside in China, so have worked for formerly state-owned enterprises, so do have individual links to the Chinese Communist Party. And while here we don't, condemn obviously Chinese Americans or making ties between China and the United States, this group is not doing that. It's fostering ties between the Chinese Communist Party and the United States.
By the way, I actually do condemn making ties between China and the United States. I don't think that you expend government resources and public policy apparatus in a time of basically a hot war, a hot cyber war, and a hot trade war. I think you cut off relations and you make them hurt.
I would agree, but the individuals who are in this group are Chinese Americans, and sure.
Tough.
Yes,
tough. But I mean, it doesn't matter where you come from. If you are aiding and working with a hostile power to the United States, and you are a traitor, you could come from Namibia, you could come from Britain, you could come from America. I don't care.
And interestingly enough, on their About page, you see pictures of a lot of their members posing alongside high-level Chinese Communist Party leadership, including Xi Jinping and other party leaders. The group, as you mentioned, I believe in the last segment, was the brainchild of none other than Henry Kissinger. And they conduct private briefings, they've said, for at least 300 members on Capitol Hill. They've also, I think, talked to people, they say on their website, federal agencies, and even to the White House level, which is really concerning because, again, these are private meetings occurring behind closed doors, which is very frightening, especially with a country that loves to target people with intelligence operatives, as we've seen. I'd say it's even more concerning considering that Xi Jinping described the group in 2015 as friendly towards the Chinese Communist Party and deserving of his, quote, heartfelt gratitude. That was at a reception in Washington, I believe, where members from this committee got to hang out with Xi and spend spend some time with him. But there's also, of course, anything relating to China and the Chinese Communist Party, a Biden link. So people who've been tapped to lead agencies such as Health and Human Services have offered their support for this group, writing letters praising the conference.
Welcoming people to the conference.
Well, yes, welcoming people.
Javier Becerra, right? Wrote the welcome letter to this CCP-run conference. This is Biden's pick for Health and Human Services, right?
Yeah, and this is one of many conferences that they've had. They've seen entities such as the Bank of China, which again is a state-run enterprise, even Alibaba, which has similar links to the Chinese Communist Party, sponsor these conferences. I'd say the worst conference that they ever put on, as we just mentioned earlier in this segment, talking about researchers who steal intellectual property, even from places like children's hospitals. Believe it or not, this group actually had a conference. I'll just read the title of it. Science and Technology Caught Between the United States and China, the Challenges Facing Chinese-American Researchers. And they have a ton of panels talking about how it's essentially racially profiling these individuals, despite the fact that all these DOJ indictments suggest otherwise. And one last thing, a lot of individuals who are mentioned in that Axios piece, when they actually choose to report on the Chinese Communist Party, I believe it was Rep. Judy Chu and Mike Honda, who had posed alongside this Chinese intelligence operative, have also attended this conference.
Of course they have. All right, Natalie, we're at the end of the show here, I believe, so we've got to go. Time flies when you're taking down the CCP. I want to bring people's attentions very quickly to the Patriot of the Year Award. I don't know if we can get that article up on the screen for you very quickly. The National Pulse. I'm just sick and tired of Time Magazine and the Person of the Year. It's on the homepage, producer David. And so we decided to do our own. And we call it, it's at the top of the page, David. We call it the Patriot of the Year, and we have decided none other than Mayor Rudy Giuliani gets the inaugural Patriot of the Year award. We're keeping a close eye on this story coming out, the report that claims Dominion error rate of 68%. There's a new report. It's up on thenationalpulse.com right now. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned. David Brody, Water Cooler, up next here on Real America's Voice. We'll see you again tomorrow, 3 p.m.